folks. meaningfulmoney.tv/love. Love. Hi, folks, and welcome to another Meaningful Money podcast. This is session number 604, and welcome back, as always, to my learned friend, Mr. Roger Weeks.
Hi, Pete.
Hello. You all right?
Yeah, I think so.
How is 2026 shaping up for you so
Oh,
far?
it's going magnificently. Actually,
Magnificently.
but
Good.
far more settled and quiet than it was this time last year. That's for
Well,
sure.
because you were coming off the back of the flood, weren't you?
Yeah,
at home.
yeah, really good start to the year.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm
It
glad
only got better from then on.
Good. I'm glad we've not had a repeat of that.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
So today is an episode that's going to be a deep dive about one of the touchiest subjects and probably one of the misunderstood in financial
Yes.
planning, which is risk.
Yeah, this is going to be good. Well, I hope so. Anyway, possibly setting ourselves up for a fall. But like, if there's one subject that, as you say, Roger, is misunderstood, I think it's misrepresented as well by advisors and by the industry at large. It is this subject of risk. And actually, it isn't just one subject, is it?
No, it isn't. There's loads of little nuances that are all interlinked. That's the thing about this.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of them stand alone and some of them don't.
Yep.
So some are constant, some appear at different times in our lives.
Yeah.
Some just a transit, they pop in and go back out again.
They do. Yeah. But we kind of need to understand them. And as we always do on standalone shows, some people might not have done listen to us do a standalone show for ages, but what we do is we're going to give you everything you need to know first, and we'll follow it up with everything you need to do. And specifically, right towards the end, we want to just give you something called a risk lens, a way of assessing risk in a sort of qualitative way. So we'll get that to that towards the end.
Yeah, and after the main part of the show, we're going to read a review that's been left by a listener.
We're saying actually, because on the Q&A shows, people leave their reviews in the questions, don't they, which is quite nice. But on these sort of deep dive shows, we should add a review. Keep the reviews coming, folks. meaningfulmoney.tv/love. Okay.
And we'll also tell you what we're going to cover next time.
Yes, we will. Remember, any notes or links that we talk about today, they will be at the show notes. It's the only link you need to remember as you're listening to this. So if you're out and about, just remember this, meaningfulmoney.tv/session 604. Session 604. Let's get started and talk about what we need to know about risk.
Well, I think we just need to reframe what risk is entirely.
That's a nice aggressive start. Good. Yeah.
Well, most people have too limited a view as to what risk is. It's like, oh, what is it? And we've got to fear it. It's something horrendous in the background.
Yeah. Key point right at the start. Risk is not to be feared. It's to be embraced. But I think most people think that they sort of connect risk with the market, don't they?
Yeah.
Like their investments.
Well, I'm going to lose my money. That's I'm going to risk of losing my money. That's all I'm going to worry about.
Markets are going to crash. It's all going to go.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's what many people think it is. But actually, risk is anything that increases the chances of you not getting the life that you want.
Yeah, because it could be a risk you're not even thinking about. It's not necessarily market risk. We'll cover that in a minute for you.
Yeah, I got a load of risks to talk about.
And there'll be something in there that will risk the chance of you not getting where you want to be, but it's not the markets that's doing it.
No, it usually isn't.
No.
Actually. So that's going to be really important to cover. Market's really just one of many sources of risk, and certainly not the biggest, not for most people. Good planning doesn't remove risk. Removing risk entirely is impossible. That's just the nature of being a human on planet Earth, isn't it? There's, you risk that you sort of turn your ankle over when you step off the curb or get hit by a bus or, that your horse comes in on the 335 at Kempton Park, right? So there's risks everywhere. Good planning doesn't remove it. What it does is it helps us choose which risks to accept.
Yeah, we're taking risks, like you say, as I say, Pete, all the time, and we're just saying, okay, we're happy with that one, not happy with that one, or we're partly happy with that one. What do we need to do? So it's just knowing what the risks are and then choosing to take an action based upon that, really.
Yes. So if risks are the things that sort of increase the chances of us not getting the life we want, we've got 6 to cover here. So we're going to start with the one that everybody worries about. The most obvious one. Yeah, markets and investment risk. They are real. And I think it's probably people kind of focus on these because they're the most sort of visible. You log into your investment, it's gone down. The papers and the social media outlets kind of labor on this stuff and talk most about it. But it's kind of just the nature of the beast, isn't it, when it comes to building
I think part of the problem is it's a direct hit on your emotions when it happens. Mm-hmm. You can see it quantitatively, and it's like, oh my goodness me, it does it. So, I mean, markets go down.
They do.
It's
fact.
They go up and down. There's this line that markets can sometimes go down. No, they will go down.
Yeah, frequently.
I say that to the clients, and they sometimes go down a lot, and for sometimes lots of years as well.
Yeah, it's not always. We've had a succession of sort of short-term bounces, haven't we? COVID was a pretty horrific fall, followed by a very spectacular rise.
Yeah.
2022, 2022 was a grim year, but pretty much came back very quickly. Markets have done and exceeded their previous highs by some margin. And we call those ups and downs volatility. Really important to know that volatility does not equal risk. Volatility is the price of entry for investors. Yeah. If you are going to make money by investing, you have to accept the fact that it goes up and down. Yeah. It feels dangerous, just almost in principle, but volatility is necessary to make money. It's just fact.
Yeah, because that sets the market. Then the market makers can use that volatility to give you what you want, ideally.
Yeah.
And there's always this sequence of risk, and
yes.
So is it more worrisome if it's going down or going up? Well, it depends on what you're doing at the time. If you're accumulating wealth, it's not the end of the world because you've got lots of time. But if you're drawing money down out of it, then the sequence of the risk does make a difference then.
Really does. If you're accumulating, markets go down, you're buying more units, it's a good thing. You kind of want volatility because you will average it out because you're pound cost averaging money in. When you're spending, though, if you need a big withdrawal when markets are down, that can be really serious. So sequence risk is a sort of subset of market risks. Matters more when you're spending, but less so when you're saving.
Yeah, and something we alluded to in one of the Q&As last week is concentration risk.
Yeah.
Employer shares is an example.
Yeah.
If you've got a lot of money in employer shares, then there's a risk in having that one company. So.
While you're also employed by that one company. Yeah. That company goes under, you lose your income and your investments. Yeah. We see a lot of people with very property-heavy portfolios.
Yeah.
Property is a great investment. There's no doubt about that. Historically, it's not very tax efficient. It's not very liquid. There are reasons not to invest in property, in my not so humble opinion. But if you're very property heavy, that's quite a big bet. Yeah, in its own right, I think. Yeah.
And concentrate on your home country. I've come across in the past working for another different company, and it's one of the things we talk to people about and say, well, you ideally want a UK based fund. Because we live in the UK, you understand the UK, you know about the economy of the UK, and there's all these risks around the outside you don't know about. It's like
sounds like it makes sense, doesn't it? And it sort of does. It's not bad, but we wouldn't.
But as an investment area, the UK is something like 7% of the global, or 4%
now 4%. Yeah,
of the global investment return. So it's like, okay, we understand it, but you're missing out on so much other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So this is sort of concentration risks. All these risks, they're kind of known. We know the market's going to be volatile. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it, so you might as well just sort of strap in and enjoy the ride, really. These things are broadly manageable. It's just the price of entry. It's just something you got to get used to.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you're going to be investing money, you're going to be investing money for the medium to longer term. We're talking 5 years plus.
Yes.
Well, volatility then is a little bit of a moot point. A bit more towards the shorter end is not going to be so good.
No.
But if you're investing for 10, 15, 20 years, a bit of volatility, which will always appear, will disappear again.
Yeah. One of the best ways to mitigate volatility is time. No doubt about that. It sort of flattens the longer you get, longer you invest over. So that's market and investment risk. That's the first thing for people to be aware of.
The one that everyone thinks about.
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
Number 2 is inflation and purchasing power risk. This is the silent killer of wealth.
And this is, we spoke again last week in
it comes
the podcast.
Up all the time, doesn't it?
It's inflation, it sits in the background without you really noticing it too much. You hear about it on the news, but it doesn't make much sense until you go shopping and it's like, ooh, I understand that now. But it quietly erodes the spending power of your money. And from one year to the next, it's probably not the end of the world. A 3% change, was it 3.2 with the last review, something like that? 3% change in my shopping habits is not going to be too bad.
No.
But actually, you have 10 years of 3.2%.
Yeah.
You've lost a third of the value of your money.
Things are a lot more expensive very quickly. We tend not to feel inflation when we are building wealth and when we are earning because, all things being equal, particularly in the private sector, wages hopefully should broadly keep up with inflation. Everybody in the public sector shouts at their sort of phone when we say this because public sector wages very often haven't kept pace with inflation. But generally speaking, you don't feel it so much when you're working. But when you have a fixed income, perhaps in retirement, or you have a finite pot of money to draw off, inflation feels like a much bigger deal. And we tend to, in the context of sort of market volatility, people tend to say, well, I'll keep my money in cash because it's safe.
Yeah.
Well, it's safe from market volatility, but it's vastly at risk from inflation.
Well, even back in the 80s, I can remember that far back. Back in the 80s, interest rates in the banks were like 10, 11, 12%.
Yeah, right.
It's like, wow, I'm making hay while the sun shines. It's like, well, yeah, inflation's 15. So,
still losing money.
So there's never really been a period. There've been short cycles, but there's never been a period when cash has outlived inflation.
Yes.
That's
right.
You're still losing it. I know you can see it in the bank, and I've made 3% this year or 4% this year, and it looks great, but actually, in real terms, you're not making any money at all.
No, not real, not any meaningful money. Lifestyle inflation is a different kind of inflation, something that we do have control of, really.
Yeah.
We can't really control, inflation at large. That's the Bank of England's job. Jury's out as to how well they've done that, but I wouldn't want that job, so who knows?
No.
But lifestyle inflation, this is where we call it lifestyle creep, where your spending rises and so often can rise ahead of your increase in earnings. Just life gets a bit more expensive. You push the boat out a bit and you get used to a higher standard of living. And before you know it, you're still not saving anymore, even though you're earning twice what you were earning.
And we often see that when people change jobs and they go from a job X and they go to job Y and they're being paid an extra 10 grand a year. And it's like, they should be so much better off.
Yeah.
And they never are.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if there is a step change in your earnings, there's probably a big step change in the way you spend your money.
Yeah.
But as a percentage of you should be able to save a bigger percentage of your your
one
earnings.
would hope so. Yeah.
But it never seems to work that way.
So inflation can speak to lifestyle as well. Obviously, as financial planners, when we are planning for clients, we generally plan for them to live to 100. I mean, if you live to 100, you probably think that's a success.
Yeah.
That's a good effort, right? But actually,
your money's
that's a very long retirement. It's got to last a long time.
Yeah.
And inflation is a killer on that, on those kind of timescales.
Yeah, exactly. And we all want to live longer and healthier if we can. But you'll need more money in the future. If you look at the state pension, the government affording the state pension these days.
Yeah,
it was introduced at the end of the Second World War in its present sense, really. And at that point, retiring men, if I just latch onto them, they expect to retire at 65.
Yeah,
they might draw a pension for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, be dead by the 70.
Yeah, but now the chance of living to your very late 80s is really, really good. How can we afford that? Well, if you have to fund for your own retirement with savings and pensions, that's a big risk to your portfolio.
It's a lot of money, no doubt. Yeah. I think this is the thing about like market volatility. Put my teeth in volatility. It's visible. It's right there. We look at the value of our pots and they've gone down, or it's all over the news. Inflation is insidious. They give you a headline number, but it will probably be very different from your real inflation number, your personal one. So you got sort of visible pain, but the damage that inflation could do is invisible, but it can really creep up on you. But it's so insidious.
And it's even more insidious for retired people because they're on a fixed income generally, and the trolley full of goods that the inflation is made up from. It's like mobile phones and TVs and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, when you're retired, you're spending money on heating and lighting and food and stuff like that, which is the bit that really goes up. So that's when you really feel it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So market risk, inflation risk, that's 1 and 2. So number 3 is behavioral risk. And actually, our view is that this is probably where the most damage is done. So this is where sort of the theory, the stuff that we talk about very much in the abstract, although obviously we've lived it in our day job for years and years. This is where the theory of sort of market returns and inflation, all that sort of stuff, meets the actual practical reality of the fact that we are emotion-driven humans.
Yeah, very much. And the number of clients we've spoken to that I want to get this money working as hard as possible. So and I'll go all in. It's all on
100%
red.
equities.
100% equities. I'll go for that because I've seen the returns on those. They're fantastic. And then you get a market downturn which they've not seen for a while or may never have seen, and it's like, oh, I can't live with this. I'm coming back out again. It's like, oh.
Yeah, and you've just done the damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Fear and greed, these are emotions, right? And they drive outcomes far more than theory and spreadsheets, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, and the example that one of your clients who had run his own business for years and years and years, been in control of everything, and then the business sold, from what I understand, and then wanted to invest some money, and then suddenly lost control of it, and then the market's turned the wrong way, and it's like, well, I don't want this because I'm not in control. Yeah,
very different.
So then you've got the fear and greed driving what you want to have back, but then you've got, how am I going to react when things don't go well? And it's suddenly that, I'm going to panic sell on this now.
Yeah,
you know, or I'm chasing performance, so therefore I will take a bit more risk than I feel happy with, because the markets are doing well at the minute. I'll have a bit more of that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Continually fiddling and tinkering. These are the things that we think we're adding value, but almost always we detract. Overconfidence bias, so important. Markets have had a great run. This is easy. I'm a great investor.
Yeah,
I've just stuck it in a global index tracker. It's done fantastic over the last 2 years. Well, you know, there have been periods when that's dropped by a third or half even. So we got to.
And you've even come across, I hate to say it, advisors that go, see what we've done with your portfolio this year.
Yeah, aren't we good?
Yeah. Actually, the market's down 12% this year, but what impact have I had upon that? Well, I just chose that fund. Yeah. Yeah, when the tide comes in, lots of boats rise.
Yes, you know? That's right. Yeah. You know, we get overconfidence when things goes well. We sort of despair sometimes when things go bad, even though we've done nothing to impact either outcome.
No, not at all. And is it the saying is that worry when people are overconfident, and be confident when people are worried when it comes to investing. So you know, the general rule, if the markets are dropping, you need to be putting more money in. Not taking your money out. Thank you very much.
Are you thinking of be greedy when others are fearful? Fearful when others are greedy. Something in it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's Warren Buffett.
Yeah, well, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, greatest investor that's ever lived, arguably. People do nothing, inertia risk. You know, the fact that you just sort of overthink, and I'll just read one more book before I start to invest, and you know, in the meantime, the market's growing away and they're losing out.
Well, yeah, and when you look at the market and think, okay, I'm going to buy a fund. How many are there I can choose from? Yeah. There's like so many. Thousands. So you need to just whittle that down and get a few. But you know, it's but the number of people that have come to us and said, I'm thinking about doing this, and we say, look, do it. Just take some action now.
Yes.
Don't overthink this. Step into the void, and you'll be fine. But,
yeah, exactly. I've even had occasionally like initial get to know each other sort of calls, end up not working with the client because we're basically saying, look, you can do all this yourself. You know, you don't need to pay us to do it. Just crack on. And then I'll have another call with the same person. And one I'm thinking of in particular, it was 4 years later and we're still sitting on cash. And in the meantime, the market has risen by 50%. So doing nothing can be just as harmful as doing the, quote, wrong thing. Look, you know, we tend to think in terms of stories as humans. You know, it's just the way we've evolved. We pass knowledge on through stories, but stories can be emotive, and often they kind of oversimplify fairly complex things. So behavioral risk, I think, is where the most damage is done.
Yeah, and we see it because it's an emotional thing.
It resonates. You know?
You know, it's your life, it's your savings, your investments, your everything you've worked for.
It's impossible to be cold and calculated.
No.
In fact, anybody who is completely analytical and cold, you've got to be slightly worried they may be psychopathic.
Yeah.
So market risk, inflation risk, behavioral risk. That's 3 of our 6. Number 4 is planning risks, when the structure itself goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you could have good investments. It's like having a good business, but if it's not set up right, you can have something that's really, really profitable. But if you run it the wrong way, you try to run too quickly, you rely upon suppliers, you don't get the supplies and stuff like that. So even good investments will fail if the plan is weak. If you've not got it set up properly, it ain't going to work. Yeah,
and it's sort of starting with the end in mind. What are we investing for, isn't it? We always continually hear say that money is not an end in itself. It's only a means to an end. So yeah, you can build a great business, but if your money's locked up in it and you haven't planned for an exit, what good is that for you? You know, I always think on paper, I'm worth quite a bit, but I can't spend any of it. It's all tied up in companies at the minute. Using, I think, the wrong risk level for the wrong time horizon. We talk a lot about the cash flow ladder. So this is particularly when you are spending money down in retirement. You don't want to be spending money which is distressed because it's been in a high risk investment and it's currently sitting on a loss.
So
that's really, really important.
Yeah. And one of the things we do when we come to cash flow modeling is having the what if scenario, having a safety net there to say, okay, if things don't go quite right, do I need to have something to mitigate some of that risk just in case?
Yeah, I'm always a bit worried when people kind of over plan and they say, okay, right, we've planned this to the nearest £1. Yeah. You think, no, we need to start planning to within the nearest 500 quid a month or something like that, because there's going to be variability. So we need to build in margin. I think that's a key thing about risk. Yeah. Margin of safety, a level that you're comfortable with. Tax drag, sometimes people plan and focus just on the investments, but it's also the wrappers that they're in, order of withdrawal.
Yeah.
Sometimes the order that you pay tax. Had a case recently where we actually recommended that they incur, they're about 62 now, right? We always plan to 100. We recommended that they incur, get this, an extra £550,000 worth of income tax in their lifetime because it saved them £2 million inheritance tax.
Goodness me.
And that was their priority.
Yeah.
Right. They had all the income they needed. They had a £900 pension fund, £1,000 pension fund, 900 grand, that they were never really going to draw on to spend on lifestyle stuff, but they wanted to give to their kids. So we're saying, right, okay, we're going to draw out of your pension pot, even though you don't need the money to spend, but you're going to give it to your kids, gift out of income exemption. You're going to pay £500,000 of extra income tax, but you'll save $2 million in IHT.
Yes, and you look at that in purely black and white. You say, why would you pay the tax?
Yeah,
and sometimes, as we said in the past podcast, it's worth paying the tax to get where you want to be.
Yeah, choose your poison.
Despite the fact that it feels horrible.
Yeah, the client was like, "Really?" I'm like, "Well, you said your priority is estate planning, and you don't need this pension, so you either die with it, and it's worth £5 million, and you pay a ton of IST, or you pay income tax at 20% as you go
and
instead of 40%,
gift it away now.
Gift it away, yeah. And obviously this depends when they die and all that sort of stuff, but tax is a huge drag if you don't plan for it carefully. So that's a planning risk. We see a lot of people come to us planning for an average life. The average life expectancy is 85.
I'll live to 85, so I'll get rid of all my money by the time I'm 85 and a half.
It's a bugger if you live till 95, though, isn't it?
Well, there's this general thing, isn't it? There's the chance of one of you getting to 85 is like 90%, or something ludicrous like that.
Yeah, for a couple of 60, I think it's better than even. Yeah.
Yeah, but once you're 85, the chance of one of you getting to like 95 is huge still.
Potentially, yeah, certainly much
so
more.
It's actually so you mustn't plan for. Well, I'm probably just average. I've got an average life, and
averages cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah, and even if you look at your parents. And family around you is like, well, they died young, so therefore I'm going to die young. That doesn't necessarily work that way. We probably eat a little bit healthier. I don't know about that, really.
No, I don't.
Than our predecessors. No, probably not. No, and one of the things is, when it comes to the planning, is using the wrong type of numbers. If I look at, safe withdrawal rates, so I'm going to draw 4% a year or 5% a year, and people assume that might be 4% or 5% of the current value. And the way that this is the safe, in inverted commas, withdrawal rate is worked out is based upon when you retire, you draw, say, 4% of your fund at that point.
Yeah.
And you tweak it up by inflation from then on, no matter what the fund is worth in the future. So somebody might have had a really good run on the markets. The fund's gone up 20%. Oh, 5% of that new fund value, thank you. But actually, the year after, it could drop by 15%. So, using the right numbers for your circumstances, make sure it's right.
Yeah. Planning risks.
Yeah.
This is why I have a job, really. Life risks. These are the sort of almost non-financial, but obviously the impact of finances. Really, these are often the biggest risks. So we talk a lot about almost all the risks we tend to talk about result in income either stopping or reducing. So dying early, critical illness, just, mental health crisis, being unable to work for an extended period of time. They're a massive impact on your finances.
Yeah, they do. Because it's one of the things that comes out of the blue, generally.
Often, yeah.
And so health issues changing your priorities and capacity. So it's not necessarily the income, but actually it might change the way you live. You might have to move house. You might have to alter what you've got.
Yeah.
The way you live your life.
Yeah, I mean, health issues change all sorts of things. They change priorities. They change your capacity to do things. Like you say, you might have to do work on the house. If you, suddenly become paralyzed, car accident, become paralyzed or whatever, move house. it changes everything financially as well as personally.
I know. It's silly. It's a lesser extent, but my mother-in-law, Beth, is she's a celiac, and she was diagnosed later in life with that. But it's like, okay, she now pays like £3.50 for a little tiny loaf of bread because it's gluten-free and stuff like that. And her cereal's that much more expensive. And I know it's just a little tiny thing, but actually
it's an impact.
It does have an impact on a fixed income.
It does. Our personal lives don't always go as we expect. Relationships can break down. That has financial impact.
Oh, yeah. I've had that.
No thinking too about that. It's a long time ago now. You're not
that's a long time ago. I've been married a second time now for over 30 years, and it's going to last forever now. But yeah, I mean, children and relationship breakdowns cause a hell of a lot of things, and then the children you have, are they healthy? What happens? Do you send them to private school or not?
Do they, God forbid, end up with addiction issues or mental health issues? I've got tons of clients in that boat. One client very wealthy on paper, but with a family member with extensive and serious mental health issues, and it's all consuming. These are life risks. You can't plan for them. Sometimes you can insure for them in some cases. So we've talked about that before. But these are much bigger than markets. Much bigger, longer term, deeper impacts, I think. Markets generally.
And these could be lifetime, some of these. Yeah, right. And a market is, as we said earlier on, is transitory. It comes and goes, but these things could affect your life forever.
Yeah, they really can. And then finally, the risk that nobody talks about, which is, we kind of summarized it as building the wrong life, focusing on the wrong things. Like, for example, being so obsessed with optimizing for tax and investment returns and all that sort of stuff that you forget why you're putting the money together in the first place.
Yeah.
It's see it all the time.
You're doing it for a reason. Or hoarding money just in case. I'll hold on to that. I remember speaking to a lady when it came to financial planning at one point, and she had like £50,000 in her current account. And it's like, you don't really need £50,000 in your current account, do you? You already be doing it. Oh yeah, but you never know why a big bill comes through the door. Okay, so what sort of bill might you get that comes through the door? When's the last time you spent £5,000? Oh, I've never spent £5,000. Yeah. Okay, you don't necessarily need £50,000 to tag it back to 10 or 15 if you want to, but some of this money could be working better for you. So don't hoard it just in case.
No, instead, use it, spend it with joy. Just hoarding money for its own sake, when money becomes the end in itself, that's problematic. Obviously it's still fairly trendy to talk about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I think it's laudable for the most part, and I think it helps people have some really good habits. But if you work like a dog for 20 years, don't have any joy in life, save 70% of your income, you might get to sort of 40 and you're financially independent, but you're knackered, emotionally and physically.
Yeah, and you've lost the way of having joy from spending some money. So you get to the point with all the money, you think, I can't remember how to do that now.
No, exactly. Or any kind of a life just with financial freedom is only going to be half a life anyway. You've got to have purpose and all that sort of stuff.
And it's one of these things where we say that all my numbers are working fine, but my life isn't.
Oh, great.
I've got loads and loads of money. I set myself up when I was 60, but I'm really miserable at 40. It's like, what's the point? What's the use?
So there's a bunch of risks there. So just to go through them: market and investment risk, inflation and purchasing power risk, behavioral risk, planning risks when the structure is wrong, life risks, that can derail even the best laid plans, and then basically building the wrong life, aiming and concentrating on the wrong things. Crucially, and we'll say this repeatedly, risks can't be eliminated. It's impossible to eliminate all risk. Instead, you should understand them and manage them where you can.
Yeah, going in with your eyes wide open, you can then say, okay, I'm happy with that one or not happy with that one. You can build your life around it. But avoiding all risk guarantees a different kind of failure altogether.
Well, it does.
I'm not taking any risk whatsoever.
Paralyzed under, you will be thrashed by inflation, so you actually can't avoid all risk. What feels like a risk-free life, keeping all my money in cash, under the mattress even, well, actually you're at the risk of inflation risk. Really, the goal ought not to be safety. That's a massively flawed word in financial planning, I think. What we should be after is resilience and choice, flexibility.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And we do that by managing risks.
And one thing we say then is that once you know what the risks are, you can take decisions on those, and then you can act Intentionally.
We love that word.
Love it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of what you need to know, right? Those are the risks we need to be thinking about. And knowing that, once we understand these things, here is how we deal with it. Let's talk about everything you need to do. What's number one, Raj?
Well, you need to get clear what the money's for.
So important.
Yeah, the money is not the end itself. It's got to be doing something for you. So you need to know what the end result is in order that then you know what risk to take to get to that point of view. So I think you need to write down what you need your money to do for you.
Yeah. So freedom, the ability to choose whether you work or not.
Yeah.
FU money, they call it. Right? The ability to walk away from a situation or a job that you're not happy with.
Or security, knowing that you haven't got too many worries behind you because you've got that money for that reason.
Yeah. Choices. I can choose A or B because I've got financial flexibility as opposed to being forced into A because that's what my finances dictate.
Yeah.
Really important.
Or you can be more generous with your money, either for yourself or for other people. I can be generous to myself or my wife, my partner, or whatever, or be generous to other people.
Remember, there's only 3 uses of money. You spend it now, you invest it so you can spend it later, or you give it away. Being generous, really important. Experiences, travel, great meals out, West End shows, whatever floats your boat, rock concerts. Go to see Rush in Toronto in August.
Yeah, I heard.
Have I mentioned that?
Yeah, you did mention it once or twice.
Yeah, there'll be many more times before now and then. Yes. So, these are just some examples. Freedom, security, choices and flexibility, being able to be generous, experiences that really light you up. Write down what you want your money to do for you and maybe split them into sort of short, medium and long-term goals because that will impact the investment approach and things like that.
Yeah, and because if you don't know what the money's going to do for you, you can't judge whether the risk you need to take upon it is worthwhile or not.
Oh, yeah, sure. So if you're absolutely lit up by the idea of moving house, you got kids on the way or kids are here or whatever, and you think, everything about our life would change if we could get into this property. We're saving, we're building up the money we need to make that leap. And I can't risk that at all because it's so important to me. You keep your deposit money in the bank. You don't risk it. It's going to be shortish term. We don't worry about inflation risk. But what you don't do is try and double it by going to Vegas, right? That would be a nonsense because this goal is so important to you. You can judge whether a risk is important to you, is acceptable to you enough. This pot of money exists to do what? Yeah. That will inform the risk you're happy to take.
Yeah, my pension is to provide for me in 30 years' time.
Yes.
So I'm happy to take some risk on it. Whatever happens to the markets is not going to be a worry for me because it's 30 years down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll all compound up for me.
Super important. So what is the money for? That will inform the risk you're prepared to take. And when we're talking about investment, I think particularly, but even wider risks, we need to match the risks not to how we feel, not about our emotional response, but particularly to time scale.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about short-term money, like in the house example just then, you want to reduce or eliminate the risk of volatility. You don't want to find the perfect house and realize that the 50,000 quid you've got in the bank towards it, invested towards it, is now 40. And that means you can't have the house that you found. That would be just awful. So short-term money, you want to reduce the volatility risk.
Yeah, but long-term money, like my example just now with your pension, it's like, well, actually, market risk is something I'm happy to cope with.
Yeah.
In return for the bigger growth I'm likely to get going forward.
Yeah, so important. And please, we've said it countless times, don't read the news. Don't listen to the news and certainly don't react to it. The news outlets, they don't care about your priorities. No. They don't care about what's important to you. They're certainly not going to align with your unique timeline. So stop reacting to the timeline.
Yeah.
Think about every pot. Is this short term? Is it longer term? Soon? Whatever, just and invest and think about it accordingly. Match the risk to the time, not emotion. That's number 2.
And the number 3 is build shock absorbers in before chasing returns.
Yeah.
So if you've got some resilience, it optimizes what you can do.
Yeah.
So it's like maintain an emergency fund that actually lets you sleep. People come to us and say, I got a 3-month emergency fund. Well, if you're happy with that, that's fine. But in my head, I need a bit longer than that because an illness can come along and knock you off perch for like 12 months.
Yeah, potentially.
So you need to take that worry off you and it enables you to free you up to do other things with other bits of money.
If you engineer resilience into your finances, as opposed to trying to optimize investment returns or even tax angles, if you build in resilience, you can cope with pretty much anything. So emergency fund is the obvious one. It's one that actually lets you sleep. So it's going to be slightly unique to you. Some people might be happier with a smaller one. But what you want to do is to make sure that you are able to avoid being forced to sell investments when they're distressed at the wrong time. No amount of tax planning can kind of make up for the fact that I've got to sell this investment while it's sitting on a 20% loss, because that's never going to recover.
No. And if you're allocating all your money for that plan for the future and not giving some flexibility within your budget, that's going to be where as well. So you need some flexibility within your monthly budget. If something smaller comes along, you can flex quickly.
Yes.
Without having to access other money you've got that's earmarked for a plan in the future.
We love flexibility. And often the answers to the Q&As, people are like, should I do this or this? And the answer is maybe meet somewhere in the middle, because then you get a bit of best of both. Often it's about compromise. It's about maintaining flexibility. So important. Ask the question, if something went wrong tomorrow, what is it that breaks first? Is it I can't pay the mortgage because I've lost my income? Is it, if I'm forced to sell investments while the markets are down, that's going to have an impact on my retirement. I may have to work another 5 years longer to make up for this impact now. And building resilience against those negative impacts, so important. Build shock absorbers before you try and chase returns. That comes later. Number 4, diversify like you mean it.
I love that line, the way you wrote that, yes.
Yeah. So diversification is humility in portfolio form, right? It's accepting the fact that you're never going to be able to chase the winners or accurately identify the winners in your investment. So by spreading the risk, it's just like, I'm never going to find the needle in the haystack, so I'll just buy the haystack.
Yeah, darn right. because if somebody had the answer to that, they'd be millionaires, wouldn't they? So all these fund managers who are so good at doing their jobs, they wouldn't need to work because they've done it already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you say, okay, I'm never, me as a layperson won't have a clue. I'll just buy the market and I'll spread the risk around various things. You know, I'm not going to have it all in banking.
Yes.
And I'm not going to have it all in America.
AI or America, whatever. Exactly. So spread your risk. It's like risk management 101. It's like what your granny would have said, don't have all your eggs in one basket, Rog. Do you know what I mean? It's like spread your money, spread the risks across different kinds of assets, different geographies. You know, it's a small world now. You can invest all around the world very easily. Different sectors, you know, because some will do well at some times, some will do well at other times. Different kinds of tax wrappers, because that affects access in later life. Just spread your bets and diversify. And just be wary, particularly when concentration is a little bit more insidious and hidden. We've mentioned company shares, haven't we?
And markets. Yeah, we say, okay, I'll have a worldwide market fund, including the US and stuff like that. But I don't want it all with that fund manager. I'll do another one with this fund manager. Yeah. But actually, you're still buying the same risk.
The same stuff.
You know, so it's just a different wrapper on it. So, you know, you got to say to yourself, if one of these things fails, does everything fail?
Yeah.
So having bits and bobs all around the place, one of them could go belly up, and it's not going to affect it too drastically, you know?
No, exactly. Diversify like you mean it. Number 5, design your plan for your behavior, not sort of, I would say not brilliance, not that everything will go well all the time, because it won't. No. So you need to kind of, we would say the best plan is the one that you can stick to.
Yeah.
The best investment portfolio is the one you can live with. So put as much as you can, essentially design for behavior. That's the message here. So if you're building wealth, automate your saving and investing. Just take it out of your head.
Yeah. You know? Pay yourself first, as we always say.
Exactly.
You know, get the money put aside for you, so it's done. And one of the things I want to do for 2026 is trying to convince people to reduce the number of decisions they make.
Yeah.
But remember why you made them to begin with.
Yeah.
Because the number of people that say, "Well, it took me 6 months to investigate. I'm doing that fund because it's historically done well. Yeah. Despite the fact you can't rely upon that, but actually it's returned this. I'm happy with the risk attached to it, so I'll do that." Then the markets do something funny. You think, "Oh, I'm not quite sure whether they did the right thing." You just took 6 months to decide upon that. It's the market that's gone against you. So remember why you made the decision you did when you did it.
Exactly right. We talk a lot about automation, simplification, making life easy on yourself. But if you forget why you made those automation decisions, then you may second guess them, which is can be just as dangerous. accept that the future you is going to panic occasionally.
Yeah.
It just does. I mean, I've been there, and I do this for a living, and sometimes you think, oh my God, actually, is it different this time?
Yeah.
Chances are it's not, right? Might be, but probably not. And you can sort of adjust for that. You can kind of build resilience in like things like guardrails, like, spending guardrails, as opposed to building a plan that is only successful if you hit certain numbers. You kind of want to build in breadth.
Yeah, there's never going to be a perfect forecast. They're all just guesswork. And the further out you're doing this, the more guesswork it is. So like I say with the guardrail, so if I assume I'm going to get a 5% return and therefore that I'll be able to draw that much income, well, if the market falls next year, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I latch onto my cash and deal with that or whatever. So
let the portfolio recover.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what decisions can you remove rather than make your plan dependent on them being correct decisions? Because we can only know whether those decisions are correct in hindsight anyway. So how much decisions can we move? How much can we automate? One thing we always say, you can't build a house on sand. You've got to build correct foundations. So, some risks you can't kind of take control of yourself. You've got to insure them.
Yeah.
All right. So the main ones, obviously, that we talk about are life and critical illness cover, income protection, you being unable to work for whatever period of time and the impact that would have on your finances. Even like what happens when you die, you can protect for that by making a will, or doing a power of attorney. Happens when you can't control it yourself anymore? So, I mean,
this whole thing about protection is like it's money wasted.
Yeah.
This isn't pessimism. We're just saying to you, and it's not wasted money. It's responsibility.
Yes.
If this plan to get from A to B, to be successful, I need to make sure everything's in place. Well, if something comes along, you need to insure. So it's not money wasted. You've got to insure your car.
Yeah.
Just in case something happens. But this is something that said, okay, if this plan is important, I need to pay the money for it, and it's literally the premium worth paying.
Yeah.
To give you the comfort that you're going to get there.
Exactly. Take that off. It's done. You're protected if that eventuality happens. Ask, what would devastate my family financially if it happened? What event would just pull the rug out from under my finances, and then protect it? Best people we know to do that are Life Search. So if you go to meaningfulmoney.tv/life search, there's a number on there you can ring or you can click through and you will deal with their senior team. I had Life Search recently completely revamp my shareholder protection and key person protection in Jackson's, because we own the company, me and Mike, 50-50 now, so we had to up my life insurance and all that stuff. They just we could have done it at Jackson's, but they are the absolute experts. They just do a brilliant job. So meaningfulmoney.tv/life search is an affiliate arrangement, full disclosure. So if you go through them, they kick back some of the commission to Meaningful Money, helps us keep the lights on, because Roger's very expensive to have on the podcast. Yeah. Number 7, review, don't react.
Goodness me, this risk management thing is an ongoing thing for you. You're not going to just make a decision now and then forget it. No. A number of people have done that, and the wheels come off. So, but the important thing is it's not event-driven.
Not externally event-driven.
Not externally event-driven. So you review plans when your life changes or when you come to a review date.
Yes.
Not by what's happening with the news or what's happening in the markets.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. That's really, really important. Don't let stuff you can't control, particularly when it comes to markets, I suppose, make you freak out and reassess everything.
Pull forward your decision process. That's
we always
what we do.
Talk about with clients. Look, it's important that we review and update your plan regularly. There's, broadly speaking, sort of 3 things that might impact, but really it's only one. We always say, markets and economy. We're probably not going to make any changes off the back of that because we factor them in. Legislative changes, so changes to pensions or ISAs or how all that sort of stuff works, that might mean we need to update something that we've done for you in the past. But by far the biggest trigger of changes in people's financial plans is life changes. Relationship changes, health changes, job changes. These are the things that tend to trigger almost like a blank sheet of paper. Let's review everything. So don't react. Review. If you're going to rebalance your portfolio, do it carefully, calmly, and intentionally. And of course, as you're going through life, we talk about timescales to certain events. Well, if you're reviewing in a year's time, you are a year closer to your retirement, a year closer to buying, upsizing your house or changing your job or whatever. And so you need to perhaps rethink your time horizons, your investments based on time, not markets. Put your reviews in the diary. ignore all the noise in between times.
Yeah, and when you're doing, more importantly, is as well, when you're doing a review, it pops out of the diary on the 1st of January. Mm-hmm. Hopefully not, because you might be hungover by then.
Yeah, don't do a review when you're hungover.
No, or when you're hungry. But when that pops out, don't go, oh, what are the markets doing? Perhaps I'll leave it another week. If it's in your diary for that date, do it on the date.
Yes.
Unless you're physically not able to do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, quite. Really important. And the last thing, well, I'll just sort of summarize these for you in a minute, but the last thing is use your money intentionally. Spend it both now and in the future. It's a brilliant book, oft quoted by Bronnie Ware, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, right? The last thing you want, we get one life, it's not a rehearsal. The last thing you want is to look back and regret. So we are all about balancing, saving for the future and living well today. Yeah. Really important. Tomorrow is not promised to us.
No, spend on what matters the most to you.
Yes.
Enjoy that. Even if the spend, change that word spend or to gift.
Yeah.
To whatever matters most. Because there's joy in doing that for yourself, which gives your life more richness than just having money.
Yeah. So important. Don't confuse prudence with postponing life. Don't put life on hold just to optimize a financial decision. No. Jeez, what is the point? Honestly, I get quite sort of evangelical with this with clients sometimes. Like, why would you put that off? It's like, maybe we'll do that next year. It's like, for God's sake, you might not be here next year. So, it is a balance, but for the most part, you must prioritize today. But spend intentionally. We love that word because it covers all sorts of things. Ask yourself, what would I regret not doing if I'm healthy, but I'm too cautious for too long? If I hold my money for too long, I better just wait and see. Why not just do it and see?
Even if that's taking the investment decision.
Yeah.
Why hold on to that? If you've decided to do it, just do it.
Yes, absolutely. So 8 things you need to do. Get clear what the money is for. 2, match risk to time, not emotion. 3, build in shock absorbers before you chase returns. Number 4, diversify like you mean it. It's a great way to reduce risk. Number 5, design your plans for behavior, not brilliance. In other words, don't make your plans rely on you making great decisions all the time. Plan for your behavior. It will be imperfect. Number 6, protect the foundational stuff. Take out life insurance, income protection, stuff like that. Make sure your wills and powers of attorney in place. Number 7, review things dispassionately, carefully and intentionally. Don't react and make changes in the heat of the moment. And finally, spend your money intentionally, both now and later on. This is just, these things I think will be, we've barely talked about the markets, and yet that's what people focus on.
Yeah.
So we want to give you just 5 quick questions. This is we're going to call it the Meaningful Money Risk Lens, right? It's just a little sort of mechanism that any financial decision you make, you can kind of run them through this lens, all right? So super quick. Number 1.
What could go wrong?
Ask yourself what could go wrong.
What could go wrong? The markets could fall. Well, they will. At some point, they will.
Your income could stop.
Yeah. A behavioral mistake. You decide to do something the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Or the wrong time. Your life might change in some way. So firstly, ask yourself what could go wrong. Next, ask yourself, how bad would that be?
Yeah, is it just a bit of an inconvenience because it's happened?
Yeah, or is it life-changing, plan-altering stuff, right? Ask yourself, what could go wrong, and then how bad would it be if it happened?
And then, how likely is it to happen?
So important.
Yeah.
Long-term care leaps to mind here. The number of people who want to plan for long-term care, even though they're 60 years old, and they probably will never need it. And planning for it might impact their spending now. Yeah. I have no time for that. I say we're not doing that.
Or people not taking out critical illness insurance because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
Well, the reason it's expensive is it's more likely to happen.
Yeah,
That's why the insurance companies are in business for that. They appreciate that. So if it's more likely to happen, you're probably more likely to become critically ill than you are to die if you're early in life. It's worth paying for.
Is this risk possible? Is it probable? Or is it even like almost inevitable? So market volatility is inevitable. Inflation is an inevitability of life. How likely is it? How can we plan? Fourthly.
This is a huge one in making your decisions is, can I live with it emotionally? Once I've done this, can I keep to that plan? You know, a number of people go, oh, you ought to be 100% equities now. So, yeah. That would be in an ideal world, but could I live with the volatility of that? Would I be able to cope with something a little bit less volatile? but give me still a decent return to get me where I want to be.
Exactly. If the thing kicks off, am I going to panic? Am I going to freeze in fear? Or am I going to just sort of try and tinker? Does this thing I'm thinking about doing, does it align with how I actually behave? That's your 100% equity thing. So, everybody, all these influencers, they tell me I should be 100% equity. But actually, if you're a bit delicate and you've never really experienced a market crash before, that could be catastrophic.
And you don't need to take any more risk than you have to take.
Right. Can I live with it emotionally? And then finally, what's the risk of not doing this thing? So, if you're panicking about investment returns and you hold money in cash, are you going to lose out on growth?
Yeah,
that's a numerical one.
Well, we had that question. Was it last week? Saying we've got £300,000 in cash because we don't want to take too much risk on the stock market.
Yeah,
but actually, you might be missing out on your life going forward because you're not taking or not allowing for that risk to come into the process. So you might miss experiences by not having the money available.
Yeah, exactly. Or you've been too cautious with it, and so you can't spend on great experiences in later life because of decisions you made earlier. What about future regret? Oh, man alive. I think deathbed regret must be an awful thing when you can't do anything about it. So think about, you almost kind of need to pre-think that. So this is your Meaningful Money risk lens. Ask, when any financial decision you're going to make, run it through these 5 questions. What could go wrong? How bad would it be? I can't say that, can I? How bad would it be? How likely is it that it could go wrong? Could I live with it if it happened emotionally? And what is the risk of not doing this thing that I'm thinking about doing?
And then once you've done that, you can then say, okay, I've taken an allowance for all these different risks. And as a result of that, I need to do this with some of my money and that with some more of my money. Yeah. And I'm willing to do that because I've allowed for these risks.
Yeah.
We're
going to put a summary of this as a sort of downloadable PDF on the website. So go to meaningfulmoney.tv, just scroll up, /session 604, meaningfulmoney.tv/session 604. This will be a downloadable thing on the website. So you can stick it to your fridge or whatever and just remind yourself of it as kind of a summary of the show and the things that we've talked about. But really, just to remind you, good financial planning is not about avoiding risk.
No, it's about appreciating what the risk is, understanding it, and embracing it.
Yes.
Yeah, we take risks every day of the week. Am I going to quickly jump across the road before that car comes along, or we're going to walk down the road to the zebra crossing or whatever?
Yeah.
Little things that you do every single day.
It's about choosing the right risks at the right time for the right reasons. Just remember that. Good financial planning is not about avoiding risk. It's about choosing the right risks at the right time for the right reasons. Risk is inevitable. It's just about harnessing it. All of this is in the service of a meaningful life. That's the point.
And it's individual to you. So what somebody else will accept as risk, even if it's your partner, will be different to yours. It's a balance between putting up with what you're happy with and not running with the crowd because they think you should be doing something different.
Yep.
It's your risk.
It is. I feel like we covered some good ground there.
That's really good. I enjoyed that.
We're both kind of leaning forward. We're quite into that. Come on! Great work. Right, let's cap things off with a review.
There's a review from Ray Spud. There's going to be a play on words on here, I'm sure. That's headed up professional, educational, and entertaining. The best finance-related podcast I've found, full of helpful, practical information, well-produced and well-pitched for the average listener. Entertaining without being patronizing. Only wish I'd found it 10 years ago. Highly recommended.
Thank you, Ray.
Well done, Ray.
Thank you. What was that? That's it. Well produced, Kate. That's good to hear, isn't it? Yeah. But thank you for that, Ray Spud. Look, if you like what you're hearing on the podcast, please leave us a rating or review. You can do that wherever you're listening to this show. You can hit the like button on YouTube if you're watching it. But if you want to leave us a review, do that. Meaningfulmoney.tv/love gives you a few places you can jump off to do that. And that's it. So next time we're going to be doing another Q&A.
Q&A, I think, next time.
Yeah, we're sort of hoping to blend these, aren't we, a bit?
Yeah, because give you a bit of difference in each week when we can listen to them. So that's it for this meaningful. Yeah, variety.
It's the spice of life, Rog.
Yeah.
So I've heard. Yeah.
So they tell me. And that's why you need risk. You take a variety of risks.
Yes, exactly.
So that's it for this session of Meaningful Podcast. We hope it was helpful.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments, please go to meaningfulmoney.tv/session 604.
Yeah, and we'll have that downloadable sort of summary there for you. So definitely go get that. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you once again, Mr. Roger Weeks.
I enjoyed that one.
But not all the others. We'll talk to you next time.